My name's Roxanne. I'm the Executive Director of Camcycle, also known as Cambridge Cycling Campaign. And this year we celebrated our 25th birthday. Sadly, we didn't get to have our party, but we are very proud of the work we've done over the last 25 years. I was Camcycle's first paid employee, and I have been with Camcycle for, I think, nearly 6 years now. And boy, has time flown by. We are a membership organisation and a registered charity, and as of today we have 1,571 paid members, and it keeps going up, which is excellent. Now, here is my blank warning slide. This evening I'm not here to talk about why we do what we do, because you're all on this call, you know why we do what we do. And I'm not really going to talk about what. I'm not here to talk about the details of infrastructure, but don't worry, I know we have some nice new roundabouts and bridges, and I will make sure we can touch on those. But really what I want to focus on is the how. How has Camcycle gone about our campaigning? Because I think, from talking to Alison and Andy about your goals, you've just become a charitable organization, you're really ramping up now. So what can we share from Camcycle's experience to really help you in that journey? Get there faster, don't make some of the mistakes we may have made, or by all means steal our ideas and our content and use it for your own if you would like. Here's a crowd-pleasing picture where I tell you about who I am and why I'm here. So I wasn't a cycling campaigner by trade at all. I just liked riding my bike, but clearly was very passionate about it if I thought cycling to my wedding was the way to go. And we were just talking about those river paths in Melbourne. This is just by the Yarra. For me, cycling was a bit of an accident. I had a housemate who said, hey, why don't you try riding a bike? I'll pump up your tires and help you get along. And within 12 months, I went from wobbling down to the shops to a 210 kilometer charity bike ride. And it was the cycling in Cambridge that was why I in particular moved here. My husband came for the science, but he sent me 2 pictures of Cambridge with bicycles. I was like, that's it. That is where I want to live. But when I arrived in Cambridge, I did Google cycling and did come across the Cambridge Cycling campaign with a picture of a bike next to it, and didn't join. So I was aware of Camcycle or Cambridge Cycling Campaign, but clearly there had been something when I experienced the organization that I didn't join. And then somehow I've ended up here. So I've always kept that in my mind of, well, what would someone like me have needed to see to make me join Camcycle when I Googled cycling in Cambridge? But that said, now that I'm in the organization, oh my goodness, what an impressive organization. We have got founding members who are still with us. They're still on the board of trustees. They're still helping so much with the infrastructure that makes Camcycle work, but also with the campaigning that we do. And I just think they're absolutely incredible. And we owe them a huge amount for the work that they've done over all this time. So we are the cycling capital of the UK. Sorry, Oxford, but Cambridge beats you on this one. And we have nearly 50% of residents in the region, not just the city, cycling once a week. In the city, our 2011 census had about 30% of people cycling to work every day, and that's almost equal for both genders. But Sustrans recently did the Bike Life report, and we can see that there is clearly still more we need to do, because there are many people who would still like to cycle and they are not currently doing so. So 15% of residents already say that they don't cycle, but they would like to. And we know there will be more people who currently don't think they would like to cycle, but we will convince them. And that 82% of residents, whether they cycle or not, think that we should have segregated cycle lanes. So there's still clearly lots of room for us to improve. And that is reflected nationally. We're seeing some really great research coming out now from the Bike is Best campaign and ARIP, which shows just how much potential there is. So Camcycle, how are we going about this? Well, I've mentioned our many, many members, and we're not really sure how many volunteers. It's hard to count. Who is a volunteer in our world? Is it someone that writes a letter, signs a petition, delivers leaflets, marshals an event? There are many, many ways you can volunteer, and it can be hard to count. But for us, we're really pushing our vision about cycling being about more than the bike. It's about where we live. If you ask anyone in Camcycle, they will be able to tell you our mission to achieve more, better and safer cycling for all ages and abilities in and around Cambridge. That everyone knows that. It's stuck there, which I think is fantastic. And we've really recently put some work into defining our values as an organisation. So we're inclusive, informed and influential, and our work is positive, practical and professional. And I know that sometimes vision and values, they can sound very fluffy, but actually this is really, really helpful when it comes to making decisions, because sometimes you need to make hard decisions. Sometimes you just want to have the rant, and believe me, I can have a good rant, but you need to come back to those values and think, actually, how is it that we want to be as an organization? Let's use this to help us guide our decisions. And broadly, you know, there are three streams of work that you could look at. There's clearly the campaigning, then there's the rides and the events and the engagement, and then there are the resources and the information and education that we put out there. This is our vision, and I said before, it's about more than the bike, and I put this slide in lots of presentations to various stakeholders, and you can see them go, oh, okay, yeah. So for us, it's been really important that we broaden our messaging recently, where we're talking about how cycling can be good for business, it's better for health. You know all of this stuff. I said I won't go on too much about the why, but by all means, if there's anything here you like, feel free to grab it. A bit of the infrastructure, but it's more about how we're sectioning off our communications about this. So we've got the three things that we're talking about: the complete networks, really highlighting that cycle routes are only as good as their weakest link. So yes, you've built this fabulous cycle lane. This is on Green End Road that came out last year. But if you go a bit further down the road, it gets pretty terrible, and well, that's it. All these kids are not going to continue past the end of this cycle lane. Of course, we need our safe junctions, like our new Dutch roundabout. And we are now being a bit more bold in our conversations around traffic reduction, or dare we even say it, demand management, whether that is things like modal filters to reduce the amount of traffic in certain roads, or if it is about broader themes like congestion charging, traffic circulation plans. We've got a couple of tools that we use. Psychoscape, I don't know, does Cyclox use Psychoscape? No, okay, so Psychoscape was invented in Cambridge for Camcycle, but it's now used all around the world, and that I call it Camcycle's brain. It's a huge discussion forum where members discuss planning applications, consultations, and general campaigning work. So anything that's happening goes in there, and we've got this amazing record of over 7 years of campaigning in Psychoscape, so we can really track things. And of course, there are people with longer memories than that and have access to our older mailing lists as well. We do a lot of collaborative work using a platform called Ensembling, where we can share documents and edit each other's work. But the big thing here is persistence. So a campaigning strategy for Camcycle, we review every single planning application that comes through Cambridge City and the region, basically through the planning system. And we identify the planning applications that have that impact on cycling, be it cycle parking, the access to the site. Are they spending Section 106 money that should be used in a certain way? If it's a bigger development, what's going on with the road layouts? We look at everything. And we reply to, I would say, just about every single planning application that has an impact on cycling. And, you know, it's got to the point now where people, developers, know that there's pretty much no point putting in a planning application if you haven't spoken to Camcycle, because they're going to go through it and find something you've done wrong and object, and it could cost everybody a lot of time and money. So we are finding now that we are getting so many more developers coming to us proactively to talk about their applications, which is great, because we really do then influence what they submit, which is better for everyone. But it's at the point now where we're almost struggling to keep up with the demand. But it does still mean, you know, despite all of that work, we still have a lot of rubbish that we do need to object to. But I do think that that standard has approved. It also started to frustrate some councillors who were like, we've been called into another meeting because Camcycle's identified that you've not done the cycle parking properly. So there's definitely pressure on people to get this stuff right now. And now we've got the cycle infrastructure design guidelines from the DFT, so LTN 1/20, we can now use this in our responses to planning applications, and we recently had quite the success. This can be hard work because it's sometimes not easy to understand a planning application or to write the letter, but we're starting to have such a good archive that you basically know what to say. You can copy and paste from previous letters, but we're also working on projects to help make that easier for our volunteers, which we should touch on later on. Along with that persistence, we've also got our membership database. Again, something else built in Cambridge for Camcycle, specifically for cycling campaigning, a very robust system actually. But in here we have all of our members, supporters, contacts, counsellors, business contacts, basically anyone that we might want to email is in this system, and we can do a lot of really clever filtering. So I can now filter just for one particular constituency or ward, and I can email people just in that area saying, there is this issue, it's happening right on your street or in your area, please can you respond to this consultation or write a letter to your local councillor. It's also really helpful for calling out to volunteers. So I can say, you know, we're doing this leaflet drop in your area. Can you help? And being really specific and targeting volunteers specifically about something in their area gets a much better response. You get a lot more volunteers coming forward when they know it's specific to them. So this has been a really fantastic tool that it's really only coming into its own over the past few years, and we're still developing how well we can use that. We also have our magazine that goes out 4 times a year now. It's award-winning. It's absolutely brilliant. You can see it on our website. Sorry, I couldn't bring some to give you, where we put all the information about consultations and so on as well. And we make sure all of our councillors get that magazine, and they've been known to turn up to planning meetings with it tucked under their arm with the big Camcycle branding facing out. Yeah, good, they've read it. They're going to do something. Another really great thing that we've introduced recently are our local campaigning leaflets. So again, now I've got the ability to get the volunteers in a particular area. We have these printed leaflets that we put through all the letterboxes, and it's really raised the profile of Camcycle to people who hadn't heard of us before. It's got people taking action because, again, it's specific to their local area. We get more members joining us as well. So a recent leaflet drop in an area we hadn't really done before produced at least 10 new members. It's probably more than that. Sometimes it's hard to track. So it's a really nice way to get people engaging with your organization, but it's a really nice gateway volunteering activity. And we find that people sign up to do something like dropping off leaflets, they get engaged, and they do more and more over time. A little bit of the infrastructure. So I think Cambridge had the first planning application refusal using the cycle infrastructure design guidelines. So that was just a few months ago now. And we have seen that the developers, having lost this round, have made substantial changes that we're now getting a bit of a look at. So we will see something much better for our station area. Thank you, LTN 1/20. So this didn't just happen recently, though. This has been years and years of keeping up that pressure, meeting with those developers. And this particular developer, this has happened to them twice now, where they've gone in, even after meeting us, even after we've said this isn't good enough, they've gone to the planning committee and it has been rejected. So yeah, we're winning. Keep it up is basically my message there. But it's not all the, responding to planning applications and consultations. It's also about really putting bold visions out there. So this was last year on Mill Road, and this is quite a contentious road in Cambridge. A very, very, very passionate community around here, and we all want the same thing, which is a vibrant mill road where the businesses thrive. However, we do have different ideas of how we go about that. As you probably could guess, Camcycle doesn't think that we will achieve that with lots of cars. But we were able to help push forward a vision for these build outs that actually go into the road space, not into parking bays. And it's a vision we'd been putting out for a while in the Mill Road, for the Mill Road. And when the bridge had to be closed for work on the railway line, because we had that vision in people's consciousness, it was able to become a reality for the few months that the bridge was closed and the traffic couldn't go through. We now have the bridge closed again this year during the pandemic, but this time it's a bus gate and it's an intentional scheme as part of the government's encouragement to experiment and create safe space for walking and cycling during the pandemic. But again, I just don't think that would have been possible if we hadn't been putting out vision for a number of years saying, imagine what this could be like if we stopped through traffic on the bridge. And then if we hadn't had the parklet showing how great that space could be if that space was put to better use.
A year?
No, that.
Sorry. Excellent. So another way of putting our ideas forward is through collaborations and alliances. You don't need to do this alone. It's really important to reach out to other groups in the community that are doing great things. And I actually think I've been seeing on social media that Cyclox is doing that. This is a great example. Look at those beautiful segregated cycle lanes and those trees. Let me tell you, the original plans for this road did not have the trees or the cycle lanes. You could have one or the other. And essentially the cycling lobby and the tree lobby and the residents were being pitted against each other. And the media was sort of stirring that up. And in the end, we said, why don't we meet with these people? So we had a meeting. Like, well, we want trees. Why are you so angry at us? We want the trees. I'm like, well, we want bike lanes. Why are you so angry at us? We want the bike lanes. Hang on a second. We want all of it. That's the bus lane, or it's the car lanes that actually need to go. And that's where the compromise needs to be. And because we were able to form such a strong alliance, I think we sort of broke the local authority group, the Greater Cambridgeshire Partnership, that was putting these ideas forward. And they had to go back and come up with something stronger. And I really noticed a difference in how they did consultation after that point in time. That might have happened anyway, but I'm going to say that it was through the strength of alliance to show the broad support in the community that really pushed this along. We're now getting significantly different junctions. We're getting trees and we're getting the bike lanes. So I really suggest finding your residential associations, environmental groups, and working with them. And we're also now seeing more and more of these popping up. And again, this is something which is now starting to stretch Camcycle's resources, because we want to see more local groups popping up, but they need our knowledge and our support. Sometimes, you know, we can fund their leaflet drops. We can come and help them have their meetings where they actually work out, well, what can you do with your infrastructure? And it would be great to see that local authorities could give that kind of support, but it's Camcycle's doing that, and we're really encouraging groups to pop up. And we have so many members that, you know, we have our members now starting to join these groups around their community, and we're building this network. And the challenge will be for Camcycle in the coming years to think about, you know, to what level do we maybe formalize this network and create some kind of franchise like the London Cycling Campaign. That is something we are thinking about. It's also really important for us now that we are not just a city campaign. We need to be a campaign for the region, because these decisions are not being made at city level, they're being made at regional level. And we don't want it to be the city versus the towns or the suburbs or the rural areas. Actually, we all want the same things, and we need to show that we're representing everybody, not just the city and the various connotations that can come with that. Promise some nice infrastructure pictures. So here is our new bridge. We can't use it yet. It just got craned in just over a week ago. It's the Abbey Chesterton Bridge, and it forms a vital link in the Chisholm Trail. And this is something we've been campaigning for over 20 years. It's called the Chisholm Trail after Jim Chisholm, who is one of our long-standing members. We gave it that nickname essentially after him, and it has stuck. It ended up in our local plan. It's in all the consultation materials called the Chisholm Trail. So here we are with the Abbey Chesterton Bridge for the Chisholm Trail. But again, it just shows how far ahead sometimes we need to put that vision forward and keep pushing, keep talking to people. And here it is. And I think this had about 96% approval from the local community. I don't think I've ever seen any project with that level of approval. And I have also never seen a community so excited about a crane and a bridge. But it's really brought the community together, and we're really highlighting that, how this bridge is actually connecting communities of Cambridge when it opens, and we need that sense of unity more than ever. And it's great that actually cycling is being seen as a unifier of communities in this way. And I just can't help it. Here's our beautiful bridge. Here's our nice and big crane. These are just pictures for the fun of it, really. And here is a number of people having their daily exercise at 2 a.m. in the morning on a very foggy night. I mean, it was quite a coincidence that we were all walking around at the same time that the bridge got lifted in, but here we were. But it was a magnificent moment. So I want to touch on a little bit of theory, and don't be scared, but it's something that I've found for me personally, and I do think it's sinking in Camcycle as well. It's a really great way to think about your campaigning to help you make good decisions and plans. And by applying this technique, I have actually found myself cancelling work and stopping some projects, because you realize that they don't actually get you to the impact that you want to have. Now, you can work on this from top to bottom or bottom to top, but essentially it's about thinking, what resources and inputs do I have? So for us, you know, we've got volunteer time. We have a good mailing list. You know, we've got these tools at our disposal. What activities can we do with those? What can we encourage people to do? What output happens from those activities? And it's really important to think differently about outputs versus outcomes. So if we get people turning up to public meeting or encouraging others to take action, that starts to give local decision makers the confidence that they have enough public support to make bold decisions. If they're making bold decisions, we start to get changes that we want. If those changes start to happen, we get a big shift. This is a very, very generic theory of change, but you can see how if you just start to break down those steps, you can also apply other techniques like stakeholder analysis. Who do you know? How powerful are they? Should we get a better relationship with them because they're really powerful? Or we have a great relationship with them, but they're not very powerful or influential. Could we actually help this person become more influential? So taking a step back from, oh my gosh, we've got to take action. We don't like this. And sometimes you realize sometimes you realize it's not as hard as you thought. Now, this is a bit of a silly example that I put together to explain potholes, and it's great for audiences who aren't engaged with cycling. But sometimes when you actually map things out, I call it finding the light switches and who has access to the light switch to turn it on and to make something happen. And so you could be doing all this work over on one side, but then you realize, actually, if we just get that person to flick a switch, things start to happen. And that's happened for us a few times where things have turned out to be a bit easier than maybe we originally thought. So we're helping our volunteers, particularly as we have these regional groups, to maybe think about these things. And we've sort of made a bit of a worksheet to help people break that down. And then that's also really helpful when it comes into the staff team, because we know that this has been thought out. Okay, here's how we're going to actually plan our campaign and use our theory of change to guide what we do over the next few months. So I definitely recommend just going and having a Google and looking up some resources of this, because it can really start to just create a bit of a shift in how you approach things. If we had more time, we could do one together, but I'm going to skip over this. But just another example of a campaigning strategy that we use is our election survey. Does Cyclox do an election survey of any sort? Yeah, I see a nod. So won't go into that too much, but really helpful to not just one, you've forced the candidates to engage with the process. You've now got them to think about the issues. You then have them, if you're going to write something, you can't really say something negative. You have to say something nice. Well, you've said something nice now, we're going to hold you to that. But don't worry if they say bad things, because sometimes they're very, very hilarious, and the media or local bloggers and influencers will pick up on that, and it actually can get you more attention. Our election survey ended up in the Daily Mail once because we had such interesting responses about cycling through graveyards. But it's also interesting because now there's a bit of a competition between our two major parties in the city to complete the survey first and have all their councillors, all their candidates complete it first. And we do play up on that by posting on social media, oh, you know, this party, they've got 90% of their candidates in, this one's only at 80%. And now it's a bit of a rush to show you how supportive they are of cycling. A few other things. So I'm really proud of how Camcycle, especially by applying our theory of change approach, developed a really fantastic campaign very quickly in response to the pandemic. And we've called this Spaces to Breathe. Again, that's tying in with our vision about how this is about more than just the cycle lanes and the bikes, but this is about the clean air, the mental health. Again, you know all of these things. We tied that in with leaflet drops when it was safe to do that. And we also came up with some really interesting plans. We called it Quick Cam. And this really seems to connect with the business community as well. We got a double page spread in the local newspaper because we had some really great proactive thinking about this. And I had a presentation that I would give to anyone who would listen to me, anyone from a business, a charitable organization, another cycling campaign, anyone. I had my Spaces to Breathe presentation ready to go, and we got amazing momentum on this. But then the government kind of scooped us and just announced a new golden age of cycling. And again, that whole theory of change, we just actually needed Boris Johnson to flick a switch and off we were. But then here we have now our bus gate on Mill Road, and further down is where you see the parklet I showed you earlier. So there we go, we were ready to roll. But I do think our campaigning we did earlier did help bring that along. Some of the more positive things about engagement, we have the Reach Ride, which in normal years has about 1,000 attendees. It's a free, family-friendly ride. We meet in Cambridge and then we all cycle together to the fair, have a few hours at the fair, and then we cycle back again. It's become a tradition in Cambridge, and I think if we weren't organising it, except for when there's a pandemic, half these people would easily go and do the ride on their own anyway. It's so fantastic. We've got sponsorship from Continental bike tyres, and we get some funding from the City Council as well. But I like this as an inspiring approach for other charities or other campaigns, sorry, because we've tied into an event that is already happening. So the fair in Reach has been happening for 800 years. We now bring 1/5 of the attendees of the fair by bike. They've had to set aside a whole paddock for us to park our bikes in. But that way they're almost doing our marketing for us, or we're now doing marketing for them. But if you want to do a ride that is about transport, let's go somewhere. And if you can tap into something that's already happening, that's going to elevate your exposure and interest in the ride. A similar thing, we now have the Cambridge Festival of Cycling. And for me, again, with this, it's all about collaborations and partnerships. So there's a few flagship events that Camcycle organises, but then we're now really encouraging the local library, the Women's Institute, businesses, other bike shops. I think we've had the cycling Shakespeare troupe do a play, but we have over 20 events happen over the month of September, and we are essentially the central promoters of that, but it's up to all of these other groups to put on their events under our banner. But again, it's helping us reach out to new groups. Maybe we can't reach out to people at the library or the Women's Institute normally, but by bringing them together, inspiring them to do something as part of the Festival of Cycling, we've created something I think quite magical. It's even been mentioned in the House of Commons by our MP. And this picture is our cargo carnival with our cargo bike parade. And we get about 70 cargo bikes parading around the city of Cambridge. And it's a real spectacle of various things you can carry on your bike. People get dressed up. We've had beehives with beekeepers, flowers, big boxes on the back of bikes. So it just makes a perfect front cover of the newspaper photo opportunity. It gets you onto ITV, the BBC, and it's doing something really positive. Now we have staff, so I wouldn't for a minute say Cyclox go and deliver something like this, but I think finding even a monthly meeting where you partner with a surprising organisation is a great way to reach out to new people. I particularly like working with the Women's Institute because they do amazing cakes. We also have something called our Camcycle Quest, which is a cycling treasure hunt, and we had a corporate partner for that. But again, development of this project did not go on this year because of the pandemic. But another thing that really helps you to reach out to new people. We must do our resources. So we've got our cycle lighting poster, our Welcome to Cycling in Cambridge leaflet, which also has a video and lots of snippets within that video that can be shared on social media. And we reach out to all the colleges, universities, language schools, particularly at the start of the academic year, and offer to send them as many leaflets as they want. We send them all the digital assets as well, just to get that out there. To do our bit to encourage people to use bike lights, we have USB battery packs that you can plug your phone into, but we say don't forget to charge your bike lights. So encourage people to plug in their bike lights as well. We got grants for all of this work. They're nice, sort of simple, packaged up things that are good to get funding for. And they really do help when you get well, what are you doing about people not using bike lights? Well, actually, I've got a great big pile of leaflets. Would you like some? You can put them up in your workplace. And it just helps to move on from those conversations. I mentioned our magazine. We get that out as far and wide as we can. Circulation, we print 1,000 each time we do a print run. They go to members, cafes, doctors' surgeries, businesses, the lunchroom. We want those to go as far and wide. And also it's online, so we get significantly more people looking at the magazine online. And we've basically cover our printing costs now through advertising. So generally I get about 500 up to £1,000 in advertising per edition now. So it's really getting there. So these are just about using great imagery with what you do, really showing that diversity, the everydayness of cycling and how everybody can do it. That. I want to touch a little bit on fundraising. These are just two particular fundraising approaches that I think would be really good for Cyclox. They've been amazing for Camcycle, so I've put these on. Don't worry, it looks like we haven't raised much money yet, but they literally just kicked off the co-op last week and the big give hasn't started yet. You've missed the round for this year, but for next year, you can apply to the co-op local community fund. And if you are selected, you can encourage your members, people in the community, to allocate their co-op points to you. The co-op local community fund paid for the leaflet, the Welcome to Cycling in Cambridge leaflet that I just showed you, some of these USB packs, our cargo bike customization, and the branding. We did so well out of the co-op community fund, and I'm amazed and so pleased that they've picked us again for this whole year. So there's a really good project there. The Big Give Christmas Challenge is a match funding campaign, and we did not start with a £15,000 target, but I'm hopeful that we'll raise that much through the Big Give this year. So if it's something you wish to go down, give me a call. I'm very happy to talk you through it. So that is basically some of what Camcycle is doing. And I just raise, these are the big questions that we have about our future. And I've touched on these issues, I think, during the talk. How professional are we versus how grassroots are we? Are we scrappy underdogs, or are we actually now really up there, setting the agenda, putting forward our ideas before others have even thought of them? And it can be really hard because if you get too professional, people might not feel like they have the same sense of ownership over the organization. So it's a fine line to tread. I talked about local or regional. As we spread out further, it becomes a more difficult task to represent everybody, to keep everybody on message, on policy. Critical friend or direct action, how bold do we want to go? Extinction Rebellion has moved that window over significantly. Do we need to go that far, or are they doing that for us, and we can just stay here and remain on better terms with our stakeholders and the local authority? And I mentioned before, do we react to what's given to us, or do we go out and say, no, here's what we want to see, and campaign at that level? So these are all the questions, and there are many different views within Camcycle, and I get the great job of trying to turn all of that into a strategy along with the trustees. But it's worth it, because this is what we'll get, and this is what we're aiming for. So we've got to focus on what has the biggest impact and gets the most change as quickly as possible when we make those decisions. I'm not asking you to support our work, but I left that in here because it's what I put on all my presentations. And I've had a great week. I've done so many presentations over the last fortnight. I've got trustee applications, funding, volunteers, and new members from it. So it's always worth mentioning. And thank you. Thanks for listening. And I'm here to answer any of your questions.
Whoa. Roxanne, that was fantastic. Alison, how do you want to manage this? I've made a few notes of some questions.
Well, I was imagining you two pick out the questions.
Yeah. Do you want to start then, Andy?
Yeah. Roxanne, that was inspirational with a capital I, and just wonderful. Difficult to know where to start. The chat we've got several councillors listening to you, and quite well informed, of course. They're aware that actually your local authorities are rather similar to ours in that it's a two-tier system, and we all find that pretty difficult and frustrating, with the Highways Authority being separate from the planning. Are there any sort of tips about how you bring people together? And in particular, an early question was, have you had success with getting people to make good junctions through the planning process? There's quite a mouthful there.
Yeah, I think, I mean, we say we have a two-tier system, but in Cambridge, it feels more like a 5 or 6 tier system, because we've got the City Council, the County Council, which is the Highways Authority, we've got the Greater Cambridgeshire Partnership, the Combined Authority, and then we've got the surrounding areas like South Cambridgeshire District Council and the various parish councils as well. Oh, and then we've got our MP. So it's mind-boggling and ridiculously inefficient. I think the trick is you've got to find your allies at each of these organizations, and that's where sometimes just literally list everybody you know. Who can you talk to? Who's positive? Who can they talk to? Who can they introduce you to? And you need to build that credibility, and that's where the approach of being a critical friend, I think, is so vital. If you haven't earned the trust and the relationships to have those conversations, if you start being maybe too direct, you could put those off. But if you're not even getting in the door and you can't even get started, then maybe you need to be more direct and more bold to get the door open. I mean, you'd have to assess in your own situation, but I think it is about, for us, it has been that we have built that credibility and we are trusted, not by everybody, but by enough people where even those who haven't trusted us, maybe we've managed to get them in a meeting or present to them, and they've gone, oh wow, that's actually very robust thinking, and you've challenged me, and I have seen people's attitudes change even in an hour if you put something really positive and practical to them. In terms of junctions, LTN is going to be a game changer here, and you need to be on it. You need to be looking at every single consultation, planning application, every junction, and saying this doesn't meet LTN. There still seems to be some different attitudes about whether this is the standard that must be applied now or not. It is, depending on how you look at it, but even if not, it will be. So anyone you are talking to, tell them they need to start working at this level, or they may end up with a situation like the developers in Cambridge had, where they wasted all this time and money for something that was rejected. So they're better off saving their own time and money and designing to the right standard. now before they lose, their DFT might not give them funding. They will get poor scores when the Active Travel England and the Commissioner is put into place. So best plan ahead, do the right thing now. And don't be afraid to put your own designs forward to encourage them.
Just a very practical question from somebody, Roxanne. How much did that bridge cost?
Yes, I need to go and just check, but I believe it was around the £4 million mark, but please don't hold me to that, because there are so many things that have happened. I can't pull that off the top of my mind. I know that there were some views that maybe it was a bit expensive, but people who even thought that have gone and looked at this bridge, and it is actually a very beautiful bridge. Those pictures have not done it justice. And they've gone, wow, this was worth the money. It is actually, it's such a sensitive location where it's been put that it had to be a beautiful bridge.
And I was wondering, where did the funding come for the bridge and the trail?
Yeah, I think these are different pieces of funding. As I'm sure you're used to, this bit comes from here and there, developer contributions, but broadly, this is the Greater Cambridgeshire Partnership Project. It was one of the first that really got up and running. And again, because it was almost seen as shovel ready, because of the 20 years of campaigning we had done, we managed to get it as an idea into the local plan. So when the GCP began, they had all these other projects that were going to take a really, really long time, but saying, hey, this is one we can get started immediately, was good for them. It's taken a lot longer than I think they hoped. There's been a few particular, this had 96% approval, but about 10 people, really just one person, have managed to delay it by a number of years through various legal challenges. And I hope they're ashamed of themselves for the amount of money they've cost our region for that project. But anyway, worth every penny it will be.
And the other thing which you said early on, and which we completely agree with, is working with other voluntary groups. And we're very lucky that we've got good relationships with several other groups, including the Oxford Civic Society and low carbon groups and the Pedestrians Association. And I wonder, are there any specific groups that you work with for the sort of success you describe on, I can't remember now which road it was, but the one which...
Yes, it's Milton Road. So originally it was Camcycle versus the Milton Road Residents Association, and that was who we met with, and we were all a bit bristly, and now we're great friends, like really great friends. So the Milton Road Residents Association and another residents association for an area off Milton Road, and Camcycle, and we called it the Milton Road Alliance, and we made banners which had all of our logos on it. And again, the Residents Association maybe didn't have the funding to do that, I can't remember, but we helped contribute to that. We helped with leaflet deliveries, and all of this had all of our logos on it. So it just really helped to cement that local residents want cycling as well. These cyclists aren't these sort of mysterious creatures that come from nowhere. We actually live in the area, we are residents, and we do want safe places to cycle on our streets as well as other people's streets. And that's what we're continuing to do. So there's the picture I showed you of the poster, that's Abbey Road Residents Association, that's been started. We've got the Coldham's Lane Residents Association reaching out to us as well. So I actually think residents associations are really key, particularly because the way that cyclists or people who cycle are othered and sort of treated as though we're not residents. It's sort of, residents don't want cycle lanes. Where do you think the cyclists are coming from? So I think that's quite a good one. Definitely the other environmental groups. We're doing a lot of, cross group talks and things like that. But also definitely try and, oh, there's my intern joining. Hi, Ellie. She went to Oxford. There's, apologies, I just lost my train of thought. I haven't seen her for a while. Business groups really look to either is it your Chamber of Commerce, Small Business Association, or even the big ones. We've got an organisation called Cambridgeshire. I haven't really done much with them, but now I'm trying to talk to them because they are making big decisions. You need to be careful because if you're talking to business, people say, well, you're part of big business, you're trying to create growth in Cambridge. And we've had to make it very, very clear that we are neutral about growth in Cambridge. But if growth is happening, cycling needs to be part of what will make it feasible and less burdensome on our environment and people who live here. So it's a tricky line there, but I think the business community is key.
Thank you.
Can you tell me how much your subs are? How much do members pay?
Yes, it is £3.50 for budget, and we want to make sure that we have a really accessible level. No questions asked. If that's what it is for you, that's what it is. £17.50 for individuals, £22.50 for household, and a donor membership at £100 or whatever you like to give. And we give the option when you sign up to top up with a donation as well.
And who does your photography? I mean, what with that and the leaflet design, it's just breathtaking. It feels a full-time job.
Yeah, well, I see a question here about the staff that we have, and I'm so sorry, I should have mentioned that at the start, because I imagine it could feel challenging when you see that. But when I tell you that we have myself, 4 full days a week in theory, but to be frank, it is more than that. Anna, who is our communications and community officer, she's coming up close for 4 days a week. We just hired an administrative officer for about 2.5 days a week. And we have a summer internship that is grant funded. And that's Ellie, who just popped in here. So Ellie can wave. I can't see her face, but she must be around somewhere. Because of the pandemic situation, and we've had some extra funds, we've got Ellie back for another period of time, and then another intern back to keep some of our policy work coming along. So that's the staff we have. The photos, we have an amazing local photographer, Lucy. She does photography for us on a voluntary basis. So quite a lot of photos are from her. But Anna, our comms officer, is also a very talented photographer. I mean, honestly, Anna is a diamond. I mean, one in a million to find someone like Anna to work for Camcycle with the breadth of her skills for communications, including photography. So if you can find anyone like Anna, I mean, just amazing. I think she's incredible and has been so key to how well Camcycle is presented to our community.
Yes, well, I think that's good. Things attract more good people. That's the way. And we do have good photographers. I'm pleased to say Johnny and Graham do good photographs, but it's then getting them all together and putting it into a leaflet and the rest of it. And Simon asks, how small do you go when you say you look at every planning application? There must be some sort of filter to make it not worth your while, or
well,
how do you organize that?
Yeah, actually, for some people, the small ones are really all that they're comfortable with. You know, if you've got a cycle parking policy and it just says very clearly how much cycle parking you should have for a house, how far apart the stands should be, that's something that's really easy for volunteers who are newer to this area of work. So honestly, sometimes it feels a bit ridiculous, but we reply to nearly all of them. Even if they are that small, and that way you work your way up. But it is something where I won't put staff time into that level of detail. If we see the planning application, we'll flag it, we'll put it on, but it's definitely not something that I think warrants staff time. But actually, if you've got enough volunteers engaging, there is no application too small or too big.
That is a question. How do you communicate with your members to sort of invite them to get involved with something like that?
Yeah. So Psychoscape, where really the active members are in there, but we do a weekly email to our members. So Cameo, the system I showed you, usually it's every week on a Friday afternoon at the end of the week, and we say, here's what's happened, here's what we've done, here's the consultations coming up, here's the threads in Psychoscape that we're talking about these various issues in, and we direct people to them. You know, most of our members are probably, a lot won't read our emails, but I've been surprised actually at the feedback we've had about how well people respond to those emails. And for some people it's just, yes, I like being told to click here and say something, and that means I do it. So it's important and to break things down. And Anna's great because in our email she even says, have you got 5 minutes? Do one of these things. And I think people find that, oh, that's actually more tolerable. I can cope with that.
Our coordinator is somewhere in the audience, and I think that those were her words exactly, that you know, you've got to aim to engage with the reader in a way that they feel they can contribute, and that's very lovely.
There's a very practical question. Is Psychoscape like Slack? I mean, how does it work?
Yeah, it's bigger than Slack. The amount of stuff we have going on, I think, would be quite hard to manage in Slack. I do use Slack for the staff team and key volunteers that I'm working with all the time on projects, because it would just be ridiculous to be having all of that in Psychoscape or in email. So there is a Slack for the really intense work, but Psychoscape, it structures things. So it was made by a geographer, so it's by you looking at maps, so you can say, well, in this road there's this issue, and then the discussion happens. So as someone who joins Psychoscape, you can basically draw a circle around the area you're interested in, and you'll only get notifications about things happening in your particular area. But I would recommend you can go and take a look at it. I can pop a link in after I've finished here, and take a look. I'm not sure what you're using, but I find it really helpful because it's using a map where you can see, well, what else has happened in this area before, or has this road already had something happen that I need to know about? But Martin, who made it, is doing, there's going to be some significant updates that I think is going to make it even more useful and connected.
Do you actually have an office that people can come to? We don't have that. Yes,
we do. We were so lucky. I think you've got, or you've got a similar business to Outspoken in Oxford. So the Outspoken businesses, we've known them for quite some time. And when they moved into their new warehouse location, they had a few small offices that they rent out, and we got first pick. So we do have an office, and we just had to upgrade because we don't fit in it anymore. So we do have a bigger office. And volunteers can come in. We found it started to get quite difficult if people were coming in at all times. So we created Volunteer Thursdays, which was when most of those volunteers were free. And basically, I just put the pens down and go, right, everyone's coming in for the next 3 hours, and we're just going to be here to help them get their projects going, whatever it is that happens to be going on at the moment. So that's quite helpful to have the space, but also there's so much stuff to store. And I am slowly taking over the Outspoken bike depot because they let me commandeer part of the car park for a bike shed and a storage shed. And I've snuck a bit out of their storage room. So yeah, it's amazing when you have space, how quickly you fill it.
People, somebody would like to know what your membership database runs on, and is that also in Psychoscape, or is that?
No, it is called Cameo. I'll get a link and pop it in there for you. And it was made by our membership secretary, who's been involved with Camcycle for 25 years. So he's got a very good understanding of what we need. But as we've grown, being able to adapt the system and really push to, you know, I needed more features around, you know, fundraising. What, you know, if people given donations, how do I find them to say thank you? It connects in with our finance system as well. So I'll send a link, but it is available for other organizations to use if they want it as well. There it is, got the link. I don't think it connects to Psychoscape yet, but I think we'd like to work on that.
Well, I think we could probably go on quizzing you about how things work in Cambridge for a long time, but I feel in fairness, you need to get on to the next one. Alison, can I hand over to you for thanks and moving on to AGM?
Yeah, well, thank you, Roxanne. I'll just thank you so much, Roxanne. It has been an inspiration, but also extremely daunting. The thought of getting from where we are. Can you hear me?
Yeah, it's a bit quiet.
So, yes, getting from where we are now to where we will be. I think one of the I didn't quite get the sense of how many other groups there are in in Cambridge. But I mean, we in Oxford are really fortunate in having groups like Oxfordshire Livable Streets and the Oxford Pedestrian Association, as Andy said, all the low carbon groups. And so we are working together in a coalition, and I do feel that's, well, and the civic society, and I think that's giving us a lot of extra power. But also it kind of, there's an element of that which means that we, you know, we're all collaborating, but there is a risk too of dissipating what we're doing. So and I didn't know, that was actually one question to you, Roxanne, before leaving. Do you have the equivalent of kind of our Oxford Pedestrian Association, Livable Streets, etc.?
No, we don't. In some ways we would like that, because you know, often there's a lot of walking issues that come up, and it feels like Camcycle is doing more than anyone else really in raising some of those issues. A lot of people just don't realize that, but if we notice issues about walking, we mention them. And if there was a specific group here, it would be nice to sort of make sure that they're, even if we don't agree on everything, that voice is there. And we've had a few people sort of start something but never really get there with a walking group. But I also can see your point where it can dissipate the work, and I guess the trick is making sure you're regularly working together and maybe making it more of an alliance to be strong with that.
And we are doing that, because we've got this coalition for healthy streets and active travel, which is really, that brings the group together, so brings all these different groups together, and it's very exciting as well. And I just have to also commend, because I know Scott's here, the Oxfordshire Livable Streets, which has been pushing on low traffic neighbourhoods in a big way. And so there is a massive drive at the moment in Oxford and Oxfordshire for the low traffic neighbourhoods. And that's going to be our emergency active travel funding tranche 2. Hooray! Is going to be mainly low traffic neighbourhoods. And I think I really feel that is very much up to Scott and what the Liverpool Streets have done. So
Gone really quiet, Alison.
Are you? Sorry, can you hear me?
Well, no. Sort of.
Sorry. So so thank you, Roxanne. That has been a wonderful evening, and we are really grateful for you spending a Tuesday evening with us, and we look forward to taking up some of the learning that you have given us from today. So thank you so much.
Thank you. It's really my pleasure. And I just want to say one thing. If there's anything that you see on our website that you like, if there are resources, we are not precious about these things. I mean, check particularly with photos, but don't feel like you need to reinvent the wheel. If there's anything that we've done that's helpful, your success is our success as well. So just thank you for having me, and I just wish you all the best, and thanks for a great turnout.